This was a big win for us. It capped off a really good week for us here. That's a team that's going to have some say in the conference. They're a good team. And so we wanted to come here on the road and get this win and just continue to build our resume.
By UCF.
It was a Central Florida beatdown over the weekend for the men's and women's basketball teams.
Plus, a huge conference rematch against Houston is right around the corner, but this time on Temple's home court.
I'm Brielle live from the Emilie Cochrane Center, where I'll be talking about how the women's basketball roster has changed drastically within a matter of days. Courts in Session is live, and it starts right now.
Hello and welcome into a brand new episode of Courts in Session. He's Luke Meli and I'm Emilie Cochrane.
We've got a lot to get to today, so let's start with the third member of our anchor trio, Brielle. She's live at the Emilie Cochrane Center to tell us about the women's basketball team, which has lost a third of its active roster over the last week. Hey, Brielle.
Hey, Luke. On Friday, the women's basketball team released a statement that guards Jaisha Clinton and Anaya Gordine were no longer with the team after serving one-game suspensions. This comes after an announcement was made last week that Jalen Holmes and Courtney Wilson are no longer with the team. So now Temple only has 8 players with game experience. Both Rain Tucker and Kendall Kearns have not played yet this season. Kearns is recovering from an ACL tear, and Tucker has yet to be cleared through the transfer portal. That's all I have for now about women's basketball, but I'll be back in just a few minutes to preview the men's Sunday matchup against nationally ranked Houston.
Thank you, Brielle. Now let's get to some news on the court. The men's team was back in the Sunshine State Saturday afternoon, trying to build upon 2 tight wins by a combined 4 points.
The Owls have quietly been sporting one of the best records in the conference, and this overtime road win against UCF added to that total.
It's a Saturday matinee in Orlando, Florida. The Owls trying to build on a 2-game winning streak. Early on, Ithiel Horton makes his presence known for the Knights. He scores 8 of his 13 points in the first half, including this putback in traffic, giving UCF the early lead. Temple trailed by as many as 10, but here come the Owls. Some sweet ball movement leads to a Jaleel White and 1. It was his only field goal of the game, but not his only impact. He added 6 boards and 4 assists. Just a minute after the White bucket, the Owls battling on the glass, grabbing one of their 9 offensive rebounds in the game. This Caliph battle and 1 caps off a 13-1 Owls run to give Temple its first lead in over 12 minutes. On the other end, the bank is open for C.J. Kelly. He had 9 points. Back the other way, Battle's scoop shot drops. He had 9 in the first half. Temple led by 7 at the break. Now 8 minutes left in regulation. Lahat Chun puts UCF on the high side of the seesaw with this layup on Damian Dunn. Then 3 minutes left in the second half. Game in the balance. The Owls swing it around. Battle catches, Battle drives, Battle scores. He had 26 points. Now the end of regulation. UCF down 2. Darius Johnson has to miss intentionally. He does, and he gets fouled with a second left. Johnson would hit both free throws to send the game to overtime, but the Owls outscore the Knights 15-8 in the extra session to win 77-70.
This was a big win for us. It capped off a really good week for us here. That's a team that's going to have some say in the conference. They're a good team. And so we wanted to come here on the road and get this win and just continue to build our resume. They get a chance to just get some rest and recovery, just catch up on some normalcy back in life, and then we got to get back after it come Tuesday. Get a chance to reset. Guys heal. We had some bumps and bruises with some guys. This gives them an opportunity to heal a little bit.
That's Coach McKee talking about the nice break his team is getting now until the upcoming game on Sunday against Houston. Now, he mentioned that it's a good time to reset. The Owls have played a lot of close games. They've earned this reset. They're starting to win these close games. They weren't winning them earlier in the season. I mentioned before the UCF game, Temple had won the 2 prior games by a combined 4 points. Now, this is Temple's 4th overtime game of the season. They started 0-2 with a couple of tough losses against teams they probably should have beaten handily. Now they win their last 2 in overtime. They've won 3 in a row. Things are going good for the Owls, and they're getting it done, even if the wins are a bit ugly.
And even if these wins are ugly, these wins are making their record look relatively pretty. I mean, this was their 4th consecutive conference win in a row, sitting at 2nd in the conference right now, right under Houston. Also, this was their 5th straight road win, showing that they can sustain momentum and sustain energy on the road, especially when they know they're going up against harder teams like Houston on the road. They already know they can beat them on the road, so that when they welcome them back to the Liacouras Center, they know that they can somewhat gain a little bit more energy from the crowd again. And also just a funny stat right here. Since starting Courts in Session, before we started this show, their record 10-9. Since the season premiere, 4-0.
Man.
I think we're some kind of good luck. I don't know.
I think it's all us. I think we deserve all the credit. But back to reality, the Owls, you mentioned they're stacking up those wins as of late, and a few of them have been quad 1 wins. Now in NCAA basketball, they split the wins into 4 quadrants. Quad 1 means it's the most impressive. Basically, those are the ones that the postseason committees look at when they're deciding if Temple should make March Madness or the NIT. And Temple is 3-0 in those Quad 1 games against Houston, Villanova, and the UCF game that they just played. So Temple, they've got to do a bit better on the back end, 6-4 in Quad 3. But if they can keep adding these Quad 1 wins, they're going to be in a really good spot going forward.
Absolutely.
Now, as these wins are starting to stack up for the Owls, they've got another obstacle coming up, specifically a Cougar.
We now turn it over to Brielle Berry, who joins us again from the Liacouras Center to tell us more about this matchup. But one question specifically, what kind of crowd is Temple going to be expecting in this rematch, Brielle?
Thanks, guys. Temple is averaging 4,600 fans per game, which fills less than half the arena. Now, what Temple did to Houston the first time around should not be taken lightly, but Houston also played arguably the worst they have all season. The Cougars only put up 55 points in their loss to the Owls, the 2nd lowest point total they've scored on the season. So Temple could use any help it could get. And I had the chance to talk to some Temple students and faculty on if they plan attending the men's game on Sunday against the 3rd-ranked team in the country in Houston.
I am a season ticket holder and I'm planning to go. I have a lot of work I have to get done that might spill over, but at this point I'm planning to go and to watch the Owls beat Houston again.
I might bring my kid.
Yes, I am going to the game on Sunday. I haven't been to a Temple game yet this season. I'm so excited. I heard Temple's doing really well, so I can't wait to be there.
It certainly won't be easy to sweep a nationally ranked team, but if the Owls continue shooting well from the free throw line and play solid defense, I think Temple could potentially upset Houston once again. You can watch the game on Sunday on ESPNU at 6 o'clock. Luke and Em, back to you guys.
Thank you, Brielle. Now, she mentioned that it's going to be tough for the Owls to get this win, and when you look up ahead to this Houston game, you can't identify it without looking at the past Houston game. Temple played phenomenal defense in that last matchup at Houston. Korjan, Cooch, Nick Jourdain, 2 blocks apiece. Now that rotation is going to be a bit different with Jamil Reynolds in the middle this time around, but they're going to have to keep playing good D down low. Now on the perimeter, Temple held Houston's best scorer, Marcus Sasser, to just 12 points. Now as a whole, Houston shot just 34%, their 2nd worst shooting game all season. Obviously, it's going to be hard, but if the Owls are going to compete, they're going to have to replicate that impressive defensive performance.
And this previous game against Houston saw multiple ties, 13 lead changes throughout the game. Temple was only ever leading by 7 points at one point during the game, and this was a specific game where free throws really mattered, and I'm sure they will matter in this game too. Temple shot 20 for 22 from the line, while Houston only shot 52%. But we also have to keep in mind that this was the first game off season that the Cougars were not leading at the half. It was 30-30 apiece going into the second half, so the Cougs probably have a fire lit under them. They're probably wanting to win this game in Philadelphia since the Owls did it in Houston, so I'm excited to see this matchup for sure.
Oh, they're going to want it. And I'm so glad that you mentioned the free throws because that was so important because Temple shot so poorly from the field. Temple shot just 31%. That's the Owls' 3rd lowest shooting percentage in a game this season. I mentioned they have to replicate the defensive performance in order to win. They cannot do the same way that they did on offense. Zach Hicks was really the only guy that showed up from the field. He hit 4 threes. Without him, the rest of the team shot a combined 25%. So to get this win, everyone's going to have to show up.
Absolutely. And on Saturday, the women's team welcomed the Knights of UCF to the chilly city of Philadelphia, a whopping 38 degrees to be exact.
We'll take a look back at that matchup, and we'll look ahead to another brisk afternoon against the Wichita State Shockers. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Courts in Session. The headlines this week revolved around a heavy roster change on the women's side.
With 2 players leaving and 2 others being dismissed, head coach Diane Richardson has had some juggling to do with her rotations. We once again send it over to Courts in Session anchor Brielle Berry, who's live at the Liacouras Center.
Brielle, what can you tell us more about these lineup changes?
With the Owls only having 8 players on their active roster, you are most likely going to see an increase in playing time for each athlete. Tariana Gary has already seen more floor time for Temple. In Temple's last 3 games, she has played 36, 38, and 39 minutes. And as if the Owls weren't getting hit hard enough, Enos Piper recently broke her nose. So we will see if Piper plays on Wednesday night against Wichita State. And as you might expect, Coach Richardson has been asked about it, and as you might expect, she didn't have much to say about it.
Coach, I have to ask, can you have a comment on the roster situation that came out last night with 2 players being dismissed?
Well, they're no longer a part of the team, so I can't comment on kids that are not a part of this team.
Clinton and Gourdine were valuable to this team. Clinton was averaging just over 11 points per game, only trailing behind Aaliyah Nelson in scoring. On the flip side, Anaya Gourdine was putting up just under 5 points per game. Both players were extremely valuable to this team. Last season, Gourdine became the first player in program history to record a triple-double at Temple. In her first year at Temple, Clinton was awarded Big 5 Rookie of the Year and first team All Big 5. In the midst of losing these 4 players, the Owls have won 2 straight, moving them to 4-4 in conference play and 9-11 overall. That's all I have for the rest of the show from the Liacouras Center. Luke and Emily, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Brielle. 8 players in uniform for the Owls versus UCF at the Liacouras Center. And in the very first quarter, Brittany Garner fouls Rachel Ranke on UCF for the 1. And with the Owls with the ball, it's coming. It's coming. There's the foul. Now we're going to see Tariana Gary dishing it to Aaliyah Nelson, who drives to the basket and finishes through contact, but no foul is called. In the second quarter, Gary gets the ball to Nelson on the right wing, and she sinks a 3 for the Owls. Lots of enthusiasm from Nelson on that shot, one of her 2 threes on the day. Gary with the ball again, this time making her own shots, hits 1 after fighting her way through some contact. Next up, Gary with the save here, dishes it out to Tariana East, who knocks down the long range 2. She had 12 points on the day. UCF with the ball now. Temple's defense forced 2 missed layups and a missed jumper right here. But Coach Tatiana Messer needs some time to regroup. She calls a 30-second timeout right here. With 1:50 left on the clock, Nelson sinks in a deep 2. She had 28 points on the day, 10 of them being free throws. The Owls come out on top, 63-56.
There were so many impressive things about that win for the Owls, but the biggest to me, and as we've talked about in this show, the Owls only had 8 active players. Aaliyah Nelson played all 40 minutes in this game. We know how important she is, but all 40 minutes, that's the entire game. It's the 4th time this season that she's done that, but the first since December 11th. So she's gone a bit without having to do it, but now she has to. And now the Owls, they're going to look to others to step up. Tiara East now becomes the Owls' 2nd most important scorer, and Tariana Gary's 3-point shooting becomes that much more important. The Owls are going to need contributions from every player on the court.
Absolutely. And they haven't won back-to-back games since early December against UMBC and LaSalle, and for these players to do it with just an 8-person active roster after losing 4 players on the roster is just so incredibly impressive to me. And these drastic changes to the roster equals more opportunities for some of these other athletes to step in and really hone in on the court. Specifically, sophomore Michaela Walid had a great game. She's only ever played a total of 45 minutes this season. 20 of those minutes are coming from this UCF game where she scored a career-high shots and had 5 rebounds and 2 steals. So definitely impressive to see some of these younger players, less experienced players stepping into their roles with such a dramatic change in the roster. Now, the Owls are looking to maintain momentum down the stretch against the Shockers of Wichita State. It's another home game at the Emilie Cochrane Center happening on Wednesday. The game will be streaming live on ESPN+, but if you're in the area, be in your seats by tip-off promptly at 7 o'clock.
The Owls are 6-3 all-time against the Shockers, including winning the last 3 matchups. Wichita State has only won in Philadelphia once in the 4 all-time matchups, with that win coming back in February 2020 at McGonigal Hall.
Fun fact, these two teams come into the Emilie Cochrane Center Wednesday night coming off of wins, and they're only separated by 1 game in the standings.
It's time to break down both teams. Let's start with the Shockers.
All right, on my end, Wichita State has a talented trio on both ends of the ball. Jane Asinde, DJ McCarty, and Trajetta Colbert are all averaging double figures on the season, combining for 51% of Wichita State's points on the offensive end. Specifically, Asinde is averaging a double-double through 20 games this season and is on pace to finish the year with a top 10 single-season rebounding mark. On the glass, the trio combines to pull down almost 22 rebounds a game, but the defense is a whole different chapter of this story, Luke. For these 3, they make up 62% of the team steals, exactly 95 on the season, and 56% of the Shockers' blocks. Plus, as you mentioned, Temple is against a full, more active roster that can switch players in and out when needed. So the Owls lost that luxury to a large extent this past week.
And now over to the Owls. I've been so impressed with the team's offensive rebounding during this 2-game stretch. Offensive boards, they're an effort stat for me. And we mentioned Temple has 8 active players. It would be a fine excuse if they weren't putting that extra effort, but they've clearly put it in on the court. In the past 2 games, Temple had 17 offensive boards against Tulane and 19 against UCF. Temple's averaged over 16 second chance points between those last 2 games. Now, the Owls need to keep creating these extra opportunities and converting on them, again, with only 8 active players on the court every night. These type of extra effort plays is one of the only ways Temple's going to keep its head above water as we move down the stretch of the season. And with that, we're up against our second break. When we return, we'll break down the keys to the men's and women's winning streaks.
Absolutely, plus an introduction to a key member of the coaching staff on the women's team. We'll be right back later in the show.
Sports Update's Ricky Turner at the studio set. When we come back, one Philadelphia basketball tradition might be changing its format with the hopes of stopping a decline in fan interest. I'll explain in 90 seconds.
Welcome back to Courts in Session. Let's go, cup is half full.
Yes, the men's and women's teams have found their rhythm amidst their winning streaks, and Emily and I have picked some plays to show what they're doing right.
Absolutely. Let's start things off with the women in this play right here. Terriana Gary gets the rebound here, dishes it off to Aaliyah Nelson, and she does a pull-up 3 right here, sinks it in. And at this point in the game, Aaliyah Nelson, she's just one of those players who wants to do it again and again and again. But this time, Michaela Walid gets the rebound on this play. She sends it off to Terriana Gary right here, but pause it right here. You can see Terriana Gary's a little hesitant to do what she wants to do with this ball, but I'm on the sidelines cheering this game right now, and all I can hear is Aaliyah Nelson scream, T, hand me the ball, hand me the ball, T, give me the ball. She wants to do it again, and that's exactly what she does. Play it again. Terriana Gary hands it off to Aaliyah Nelson. She sinks the 3. And I don't know what's more impressive, Aaliyah Nelson scoring 6 points in under 40 seconds, or Terriana Gary knowing when her teammates got a hot hand, knowing when she's going to sink these 3s for this team.
It's that team chemistry. They're locked in. Now I'm going to go over to the men's side in the most recent game against UCF. This is in overtime, but the Owls have been playing team defense all season and throughout this entire game. You can play it right here. It's a pick and roll. The Owls get caught in a switch, and pause it right there. That is supposed to be a wide open dunk for the UCF big man. Hyzier Miller got switched on to him. He's not even going to contest this ball unless the Owls make a heroic play, and that's exactly what Jaleel White does. He's done it all season. Play it right here. Jaleel White on the man in the corner comes over to block it. What a play. The Owls get the steal. White looking ahead, and Caleb Battle does the rest. This is the type of defensive intensity the Owls need to identify themselves with, because if they do, they're going to continue to win a lot more games going forward, even if the offense is just a bit behind.
Absolutely. Now we turn it over to Owl Sports Update reporter Ricky Turner to talk some Philadelphia basketball, how the once dominant City 6 program has been changing, but also how our show has shed light on the city's basketball history. Hey, Ricky.
Hello, Emily. Yes, Big 5 basketball, the City 6, if you include Drexel, has been struggling to gain the same attention it has in past decades. One example was the doubleheader in late November. The Temple LaSalle game, along with the St. Joe's game versus Penn, drew less than 4,000 fans in a 9,000-seat Palestra. This news has led to a report from The Athletic about the possibility of a schedule change for the City Six. According to the report, each of the 6 teams will be split into 2 pods of 3. Those teams will play the other members in their pod in November. Once the 3 teams are seeded in each division, all 6 teams will head to the Wells Fargo Center for a triple header where the first top 2 teams will play, the second place teams will play, and the 2 third teams will play. This will be an attempt to reinvigorate the once competitive atmosphere of Philly basketball.
Philadelphia, the 5 schools, they loved each other, but they hated each other. They wanted to beat you, but then they could be your friend after the game or whatever. And the fact that they played in one venue, for the most part, just made it different.
That comment from Mike Kern came in a basketball special we did last spring called For the Love of the City. As for this new City Six format, Temple did release a statement earlier this week, but did not confirm nor deny the proposed idea, saying in part, it is aware of this report, discussions are underway about the future of the City Six and Big Five, but no decisions have been made. The statement goes on to say that all Philly schools are excited and committed about the future of college basketball in Philly. Reporting from Studio Set 3, I'm Ricky Turner. Luke and Emily, back to you on desk.
Thanks, Ricky. Coming up, we'll dive into the coaching journey of Miles Jackson on the women's side.
And we've got schedules to break down, 2 on the court and our own spring schedule here at Owl Sports Update. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Courts in Session. As the saying goes, you play like you practice, but how about coaching like you practice? I spent some time with one coach on the women's basketball team whose work as a practice player prepared him for a job on the sideline. Coaches on the Temple men's and women's basketball teams, 8 played college ball. It's the traditional path into coaching at the collegiate level. But for women's basketball assistant coach Miles Jackson, his start came as a student at Towson University, as a scout team player under then head coach Diane Richardson. His intentions were never really to become a coach.
I did it to come to basketball games. I was a little invested in the basketball, go to the practices, enjoy the gear, the shoes, the clothes.
The role of a scout team player is simple. Show up, practice against the scholarship players, and help the team get better. But Jackson made a greater impact than the average practice player.
We would give him some things to do with the scout, like get the personnel, and he listened, and he was like a sponge.
Under Richardson, Jackson was promoted several times, from practice player to manager to director of basketball operations, and then to assistant coach. This type of growth is not common at the collegiate level, and the uniqueness isn't lost on Richardson.
This is the first time we've ever had a scout guy to move all the way up to assistant coach.
And Jackson knew his time with Coach Richardson wasn't finished when she was offered the head coaching job at Temple.
She asked us what y'all want to do. I mean, we didn't hesitate. Pack us up in your suitcase, we're going up to Philly.
Jackson's on the sideline during games, but at practice, he gets back to his practice player roots.
I feel like it's a different way to teach things. In the practice, I can tell him, hey, you should be move over, or hey, cut.
And just because he's teaching doesn't mean he's not trying to win.
I count my stats, like to get in their head a little bit, but again, it's all for the fun of the game. It makes them better.
Coach Jackson and the women have an opportunity to build on their winning streak against Wichita State and Houston.
And as for the men, they'll be welcoming the Cougars to Philadelphia on February 5th. That's all the time we have for today.
For our entire crew, she's Emilie Cochrane, I'm Luke Meli. Have a great day, everyone.